Hi guys, thanks so much for subscribing to my channel. I know it's only 20 of you, but well, you got to start somewhere, I guess. I'm going to give a go at narrating this one. I promise I will do some proper videos in the future. These are from older models that I did, and all I've got are some photographs. So let's go with this 1:20 scale Tamiya Ferrari F310B, which I super detailed. Fitment with this model was really poor. Things just didn't seem to come well together. You can see that I had to work quite a bit on the front end, even putting some support braces in there to make it actually fit onto the base. These are all test fitments. You can see that the lower part is sticking out, so that had to be sanded down. Again, more test fitment and more test fitment. You can see where everything just doesn't quite line up. I had to get a file to this and start filing it down big time, and then obviously putting some putty. The bottom of the car was also really bad with these little mold sort of rings that they have. This was another terrible piece. The neck protection, the head protection, just didn't fit at all well. So I had to put a little bit of tube into there. Again, the front end needed a lot of work, a lot of filing, a lot of sanding before finally being able to get everything painted up. So I'm using zero paints. I think the primer went on a little bit too thick, but I went ahead anyway and put on the zero Ferrari Formula One color that zero gives for this year. And I had to start again. The primer just didn't go on too well, so obviously if the primer doesn't go on well, then nothing else does really, does it? Second time round, paint seemed to go on much better, much nicer. I put a first layer of lacquer. This is the 2-component lacquer. And then I started working on the transfers. A few problems which I was able to just sand out, sort out before putting the second layer of lacquer over the top of all of the transfers. Now the rear end, or the underside, I wanted to use some carbon fiber. So I basically masked off the area, cut the masking tape to size, and transferred that to the decal, and then put the decal onto the model. Here I'm using foil, and I'm also using some, I think they're perfect parts, washers and body parts. I think they're just washers, which I did this a while ago, but I think they were just basically bits and pieces that I sort of picked up and figured that looked good and fitted well. Now I'm using Alclad lacquers, and so I'm using the Alclad base coats before using the actual lacquers themselves. I quite like using Alclad. I think they're pretty good, maybe a bit too expensive for what they are, but they work pretty well. Maybe on the macro not too good. The underside, it was basically, I used Tamiya acrylic paints and used a bit of just a bit of dry brushing really. So I started working on the wheels. These are the kit wheels, but I decided to use these perfect part detail set. This was just about the only thing that I could find for this model that would fit. They came complete with weights and valves. Here I've just used this foil and cigarette foil for the different textures. The interior, I wanted to give it a bit of a used look. And the seat belts, I'll put it all in the description what I used, because I can't really remember right now off the top of my head. But yeah, so basically it was just all very minute hand painting. Now I started working on some of the, on the filler cap and on the engine, but I decided to scrub all the paint off of the engine and the gearbox, because I didn't like the rear shocks, and also the fitment was very poor as well. So I had to sand all that down, filler it all up again, take away the molded shocks that were, they're not shocks, I think they're basically control arms for the shocks. Oh, this is a kit I bought a long time ago. I'll put the link in the description. Now these rear ends, I didn't really like that little, there's the main shock and there's this little shock which I didn't really like too much. So I decided to build that again as well from scratch. You can see them there, they're like a very small shock. So these are the wheels finished with, complete with valves and weights. And again, the brakes, everything metal is outclad. And I've basically put these little posts in the exhaust pipe because I could see from the pictures that they were like that. And these are basically these little shocks that I scratch built because I felt that they looked a lot better than just the molded bit that was in there. All of this has been covered in carbon fiber decal. You can see the rear ends slowly coming together. The front end is pretty much done. Brakes are all done. And I just need to work on these rear ends. I've put little holes because there are little wires going into the suspension struts. So I've drilled holes into there so I can put the wiring in because I really want to do some full wiring on this. This is all the piping. I think it's for the oil and water. So these little pipes I've just basically taken from some household wire. I've taken the sheath off. They're quite flexible, so they work quite well in this model. This is Top Studio flat bottom support. Really works well. You can use this for a lot of models. So that's all the piping pretty much done. Now to the wiring, and the wiring I've just used a standard kits, I guess. Again, I'll put all the links in the description of everything that I've used. So those are the two little wires which I've used, which were replacing the molded part, which is just so ugly. And the wiring slowly coming together. You can really go to town on this model with the wiring. It's it really has a lot of wiring. The tires, I decided to go with these Goodyear stencils, so I thought it just looked a lot better. Here I've put a bit of dirt onto the air intake, and that's it, model build. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know it's a bit quick, but I think a photo montage is just a bit too boring to make it, extend it for too long. I will do more videos, as I say. These are photographs of older cars, cars that I did a few years back before this was sort of doing videos was a thing really. But I will be doing videos of all the new models that I'm doing. So if you like this, please subscribe. It'll help me do more stuff, I guess. And if you've got any tips and tricks, then well, you know, I'll be really glad to hear from you in the comments section. So yeah, there's these are all the close-up macros which show all of the imperfections and all of the bad stuff, but it looks a lot better in person. So thanks again, and please, you know, subscribe, hit that like button, and I promise I will do some more and more interesting content. Thanks very much again.